But there is some stuff that we need to get to, because this morning we found out that defenseman Carson Soucy will be out 6 to 8 weeks. That hurts the Vancouver Canucks. It does. And there was an optional morning skate today. So we don't really have line rushes, but we do know, if you read the scenes for morning skate courtesy of Jeff Patterson over at CanucksArmy.com, if you read that, you'll know that the Canucks are going with 4 right-handed defensemen tonight. The patchwork defense, Akito Hirose out of the lineup. And that means you were right yesterday when we had that Wolanin Hirose thing, when I talked about that, about, oh, maybe it's short term, unless they make a call up for Wolanin. You were right. They want Hirose in this lineup. When we get to that in our game preview,
but
more.
Apparently not enough to address him.
Exactly. And obviously he'll dress tomorrow against Calgary, right? But the fact that there's 4 right-handed defensemen tonight, we'll get to that in the game preview. Let's just instant reaction to the Canucks losing Carson Soucy.
Yeah, it's tough because it felt like Soucy was really starting to find his stride over the last handful of games. Him and Myers together had been playing pretty steady, quiet, relatively mistake-free hockey. And it's the type of pair that you didn't feel like you really needed to shelter at all. You could sort of use them in any situation. Obviously, they weren't going up against top lines by any stretch of the imagination, but it was the sort of pair that, okay, if they even get trapped for a D-zone start or an icing or something, you felt pretty confident that got a couple of veteran players that both seemed to, at that point, over the last handful of games, be moving the puck pretty responsibly, defending responsibly, always sort of in the right positions. And with Soucy, it's interesting. I don't think when I look at his start so far as a Canuck, I don't think he's necessarily made as many defensive stops and like changes of possession as I sort of initially anticipated, but his puck skills and his ability to transition has been far less of an issue as I anticipated, if that makes sense.
It does. Do you think it helps that his role has been kind of as that third pairing guy, that he's been able to do that?
No, I think it's the same role that he was playing in Seattle. So it's just an extension. It's just interesting that when I watched a lot of his tape in the playoffs for the Kraken, it seemed like he was struggling on defensive zone retrievals when you'd have a heavy forecheck on him, that he wasn't able to make quick decisions with the puck. You'd be able to pin him. And on the other side of the coin, he was able to break up a ton of plays defensively. So you sort of watched him and went, you love him defensively, but man, you worry about as soon as the puck gets on his stick, that he wasn't making a lot of plays. Whereas I think it's been more of a balance watching him play so far, where I've actually been quietly impressed at some of the simple 5 to 10 foot passes he makes. Haven't been worried about his puck moving or turnovers at all. And then defensively, he's been solid, but he hasn't, there haven't been many wow moments defensively, which is totally fine. I think he's done his job totally fine. And yeah, it is a blow to lose him. I think it's worth mentioning that, as J-Pat had brought up on yesterday's show, 7 of the Canucks' next 8 games are against teams below the playoff bar. And the only team that is above the playoff bar is Anaheim, which finished 32nd last year. So it's not exactly, even though they are on the right track this year, not exactly an intimidating opponent. So hopefully that helps, at least in the short term, the Canucks patchwork defense find the right combos.
Soucy blocked a shot in Montreal in the win on Sunday. So did Tyler Myers. They both got banged up on the same shift. Myers is in the lineup tonight despite having a maintenance day yesterday and not taking part in the optional skate today. Rick Tocchet confirmed that Tyler Myers would be in the lineup tonight, so they have some veteran presence in the lineup. And hey, who would have thought at the start of the year that we'd be saying, oh, thank God Tyler Myers is still in the lineup. But this organization's depth is about to be tested. And we'll use that to transition into our next kind of topic when it comes to this sort of thing. The Soucy conversation is, okay, Nikita Zadorov and Chris Tanev. That's the first thing I saw on Twitter was when that injury was announced. Okay, well, now they're definitely trading for one of these guys. I still don't see the fit. And I don't think if you're the Canucks, I don't think you rush to make that trade for either guy right now, because everybody on Twitter that I saw was saying, oh, clock's ticking, they got to get it done now. I don't know if you do. I think, first of all, you hope that your organizational depth is good enough to help you stay afloat from losing a bottom pair defenseman who, mind you, like you said, was playing very well. So I'm not trying to discredit what Soucy's doing, but let's be honest, it is a bottom pair defenseman that you are trying to replace. Sure, his minutes got higher in some games, but regardless, you are replacing a guy in the bottom half of your defense core. So you're hoping that the organizational depth is enough. I think if you're the Canucks, and I mean, we've talked about that Zadorov and Tanev are both free agents at the end of this year. So why would you pull the trigger and give up assets to get them? And we'll get to what that might cost because Dhaliwal had some stuff on that. But I'm just looking at it and saying, don't make the trade yet. If you're going to make a trade, I don't think you need to rush. I think you want to see what this defensive core looks like. And look, if you start going on a skid, then yeah, okay, maybe make a trade. Because going into tonight, the Canucks are 1 win away from being top of the Western Conference. So sure, maybe you do owe it to the players if they're able to get there and then all of a sudden you go on a skid because your team can't defend anymore. Maybe you do owe it to the players to go out and get them some help if you go on a skid. But if you're more or less playing the same level of hockey, I wouldn't be giving away one of these premium assets like a Nils Höglander or a Vasily Podkolzin, which, according to Dhaliwal, like I just mentioned, they're looking in Calgary. If they trade one of these guys, they're looking for a young prospect kind of player that can play in their lineup right now. And I think Podkolzin and Höglander are the guys that fit that bill.
We'll also think about it from Calgary's perspective. The only reason, if I'm Craig Conroy, that I'd want to make a trade this far in advance of the trade deadline is if the trade is a clear win for me. Because otherwise, I've got the time and leverage to wait until the deadline, wait until more teams have need for blue line help. And so if you're presumably only making that trade if it's a win from Calgary's perspective, it's probably not a price you'd love to pay if you're Vancouver. And especially, again, we're talking about rentals. And of course, whether it's Tanev or Zadorov, there could be a fit beyond this season, but you don't know that when you're making the deal. Unless Calgary gives the Canucks permission to speak to the agent, which why would Calgary do that?
Yep, exactly.
So, like you said, I think it's going to be an intriguing test over the next little while. Like, I'm curious to see with Nikita Zadorov, for example, he's 24 years old. Like, I need to double check this, but I think he's older than Quinn Hughes. So if we're talking about, they're the same age, but months wise, I mean.
Yes, exactly. Like us, which I always remind people.
Yeah. So the point is, you need to find out what this guy is now, right? This isn't a long-term project that you got another year or two for him to develop. It's sort of now or never for Zadorov to become an NHL defenseman. And these are the situations where I know he's not dressing tonight, but you want to figure out what this guy exactly is, right? And it's also an important sort of test to know what your other defense depth options look like. Like, what does Mark Friedman look like if he's ramping up his minutes slightly? What does Noah Juleson look like in the sense that he's struggled this season, but he looked pretty effective last year? So what is he? Is he effective NHL depth or is he not? So I think these are important questions that you want to have answered so that you can make the most informed decision possible if and when you do decide to upgrade your blue line depth.
And with Zadorov and Tanev, Craig Conroy's, this is his first year on the job. He has to hit home runs with these trades, right? He's not looking to do any favors for anybody. He's going out there trying to get the best possible return. And whether that's with the Canucks, with the Leafs, another team out east, if it's going to be the Canucks, you bet he's going to extract the most value you can. And I just don't think the Canucks are in a position right now to be paying premium assets for UFA rentals here.
This is another thing. And Grady, I think that's a great point, especially the part where you said going to get the best deal possible. Because another thing Dhaliwal mentioned today was that they don't want to move him to a West Coast team. I'm sorry, but if you're in the basement of the division, like, why is that a priority? That we can't trade this guy to the Canucks? Are you kidding me? That's so silly. Get the best return you can. If that doesn't come from the Canucks, sure, don't do business with the Canucks. But what are you talking about? Oh, we can't trade him to a Western. Why? Why can't you trade him to a Western Conference team? It's not like you're competing this year. Do this retool on the fly. Like, just imagine if that came out in Vancouver, right? Like if, I don't know. They've had so few trade chips over the years, but they were like, yeah, we're trading. We have some people that want to trade for Eric Goodbranson, but we're going to do Pittsburgh because they might not have the best offer, but we really want to keep Eric Goodbranson out of the West. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, it's crazy to me. Like, take the best offer. Who cares where the team's located if you're in the basement? It just blows my mind that this is a thought process for some people. And again, I'm not criticizing Rick, who reported it. It's not me saying, oh, Rick, I can't believe you would say that. It's, if this is actually what Calgary's thinking, what are they thinking?
Yeah, it would make sense if it was like Matthew Tkachuk, right? Because you don't want to move a superstar to a divisional rival. But we're talking about
Can you think of the amount of shots Chris Tanev's going to block on us?
like we're talking about number 3, 4, 5 defensemen.
Yes.
Who are rentals expiring this year, and your team isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
For Calgary. But hey, I mean, look, when you got a wagon like the Canucks, like
you gotta go all in, right? Trade the first, trade Hoglander, trade Podkolzin.
Oh.
No, I was meaning it more from like Calgary's perspective. You're just scared. You don't want
right.
to. You don't want to. Feed that wagon.
And
Yeah.
you know, if they get Chris Tanev, they're a cup contender for years to come. Obviously,
Exactly.
That's what the Flames are worried about.
Young Chris Tanev, durable, doesn't have many miles on him.
Okay. So let's get that to be the question in our anyone else. I want to hear people what they think about trading for a defenseman, because like I said, my take is wait it out. See what this team looks like with their current defense depth. You brought up some great points about how you want some questions answered about your organizational depth. And someone in the chat, I'll scroll up to find it during anyone else, but someone brought up a good point about how, okay, you've got Matt Irwin, you've got Christian Wallin, you've got options if Hirose doesn't work out. It's not like years past where, okay, if this guy doesn't work, we don't know what we're going to do. They have options. So Canucks Conversation with Harman and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.